Hi, today we're going to go over the settings page on a sourcing event. As you can see, I'm already in the sourcing tab and I'm already in my event with an edit availability. As I scroll down, I see that the settings page is highlighted, and today this is what we're going to review. So the first section of a settings page is the basic settings section. This is where we'll be able to name our event. In this particular case, we always want our name to start with the property code or the 3-digit accounting code that we use in General Ledger. So in this case, I'm going to write 082. The rest of the name needs to be, as you can see, simple, to the point, relevant. This not only helps other buyers look at past sourcing events and find useful information, but it also gives our supplier clear direction as to what the event entails. So in this case, I am going to write SD and HD camera project. Pretty self-explanatory. We're going to do some standard definition and high definition cameras. The next section is currency. That always stays the same, the US dollar. And then the third section in basic settings is an area where you can add additional information, either internally or externally for your supplier to see. There are 3 ways you can add information. The first is a file, the second is URL, and the third is text. As you can see, I've already added some text here that gives my supplier some directions on how to participate. The little area here that's selected to send to supplier will notate whether this particular addition will actually be visible to the supplier or not. If I choose to have this be not visible, I would unclick, and then this would become an internal comment only. In this particular case, I do want it to go to the supplier, so I'll reselect, and then I'll get this little arrow to supplier down here, meaning that when this does send out, it will be visible to the supplier. I can also do the same thing with a file. In this particular case, I am going to attach the hints and tips. So I click File, I select Browse, I find my helpful hints, I open, and then my file is going to attach here as well. To get this to send to the supplier, I would also select. That is the basic settings of an event. The second area is over here, Terms and Conditions. The terms and conditions are something that your supplier will have to agree to before they're able to see the specific details of your event. So they'll be able to see the basic settings before they agree to terms and conditions, but to see anything past terms and conditions, they will have to agree to them. So in this particular section, you're given the ability to add a file, a URL, or a text field. But your supplier must agree to these terms before they're able to see the event details, such as items, questionnaires, or attachments. So in this particular area, I can leave it blank. I can add simple text fields like quote must be valid for 120 days. In this case, it'll auto send to the supplier, as everything in this field will automatically be visible. And I can be just that simple, or I can get rid of that and I can add something fairly complicated, which would be our PNG terms and conditions for sourcing events. In this case, it's a Word document that does go over quite a bit more detail. And depending on the type of event you're hosting, really will dictate what information and what terms and conditions you're asking your suppliers to agree to. But those are some examples, and that's how the terms and conditions section works. The third section under the settings would be the documents. In this particular case, we have no related documents. What this section does is it allows you to see what documents in the system your sourcing event eventually links to. So in the system, as you know, you're allowed to have an end user create a requisition. The requisition then can be flipped to a sourcing event. That would be where the requisition would be linked to for an easy audit trail. If I was creating this from scratch and then later moving it to a purchase order, this would also show the requisition that I move it to, the subsequent purchase order, and even so far as to show me the invoice or invoices that that purchase order created. That is the document section of the settings page. As you scroll down, the other sections are eternal event info. This will be the area that we log savings and we select our event commodity. The only thing that you should be doing upon building the event are the event commodity selection here, which would be the commodity that most relates to the items on your bid. So in this particular case, I know that I'm bidding out surveillance camera equipment. So I can either type surveillance camera and all of these options come up for me, or I can use the drop-down feature and I can sort through multiple drop-downs and find what I am looking for. And then once I have found kind of what I'm looking for, that is when I will select it. The second one is planned savings. If I have an idea or a concept of how much money I would like to save on this particular event, let's say it's 10%, $200. If I have a goal in mind, I'll definitely put it in the planned savings bucket, but those are the only two things that I'll fill out when I'm building my event. Everything else should be filled out when you are going to track savings at the end of your event. Once you get into the event team, it automatically adds you as the event creator. You can add owners, watchers, and evaluators. The difference is an event owner will be someone that can modify and act as your moderator in the event. So in this case, the only people that will have access to be event owners are going to be other sourcing personnel. Once I decide that I would like to add someone, I would just type their name, find them, and add. Event watchers are going to be our stakeholders, maybe not sourcing personnel, but our department stakeholders that we're working with on this project. That way they can be kept up to date and they'll get notifications and be able to see what's going on in the sourcing event. And they don't have to receive offline emails from us to understand or see what's going on. Excellent tool to keep your stakeholder in the loop. And then the evaluator section is where we would add someone to evaluate. At this point, we're not really using this feature. The only people that have access to be evaluators are other sourcing personnel. So if you'd like their opinion on a sourcing event, you are more than welcome to start typing their name here. And as long as they have access, you can add them as an evaluator. As you can see, once you add them, you can see what they've been added as. If you decide to remove someone, this little X will allow you to do so. The event owner, event watcher, and evaluator can be added or taken away. You can add as many or as few as you'd like, but they do have to have Coupa access to be added as any of these. So keep that in mind. The next section on the setting page is projects and tasks, which we do not use, so we're going to skip that for today, and move to event type. So the event type is what we selected when we went to create this, either an RFI, an RFQ, or an RFP. There is a secondary section here for the auction stage. That includes an English reverse auction and a Dutch reverse auction. If you'd like, or you have a good idea that a project you're working on would be an excellent project for a reverse auction, please discuss it with your regional director, as those are quite a bit more labor intensive for our suppliers and we want to make sure we're using the feature correctly. So in today's, we're just going to go over the stages of RFI, RFQ, and RFP. The ability in the system does not change based on what you select here. However, it does notate to your supplier in the email that they get when this is sent if it is a request for information, a request for quote, or a request for proposal. So please make sure to select accurately. The other item that it gives you access to is right over here, and it gives us two separate areas to select from. Allow multiple responses, if selected, will allow your supplier to give multiple responses to the same item on one event. So for instance, if I'm bidding out a red toaster and I don't have a particular model in mind, if I select this, it will allow my supplier to bid on, let's say, a Hamilton red toaster and a Sony red toaster and a generic red toaster, and they can submit as many responses as they'd like. If I do not select this, they will only be able to submit one red toaster. The second option here is allow award individual line item. If selected and there are multiple line items on my bid, I will be able to award those to different suppliers. So let's say item A is a less price with the first supplier and item B is a low price with the second supplier. If selected, I will be able to award those to separate suppliers. If I do not select this, I will have to award the entire event list to one single supplier. So just keep that in mind. If I do select this, this note will show up on the front page of my bid email to my supplier so that they are aware. That is the basic settings of a sourcing event.